right, it is race day yet again. This time the Japanese are up for grabs. Which one of these will win out to represent their region in the World Finals? There's more down here, of course. If you missed it, we already did. The Americans, we know the winner of those. I won't spoil it for you, but the links are below if you want to check that race out, as well as the Europeans. Top two from each circuit move on to those World Finals. So the last circuit left to go, which is what we'll do today, are, of course, the heavy favorites, the Japanese. Okay, here are the contenders for this one, all lined up in their race day glory. It's a beautiful sight indeed. I've noticed these Japanese ones tend to be mostly electric. I don't think I have any diesel. A handful of steam engines you'll see there. But pretty much across the board, electric. Even these I thought initially were diesel, but no, they have their pantographs, so they're going to be electric. How this will work too is a lot of times these Japanese models have the engine in one of the coach cars. So for example, these two are going to be run together. So are these two, those two, those two, those two, those two, and those two. So that is just not the engine car running, but the actual front part as well. So at least it looks good, but that's how it's going to work. As for the race itself, that's over here. It's going to be just like before. Trains will be hitting a running start at the starting point, rush 113.5 inches down to the very end, where they cross the finish line. And whoever can do that circuit in the quickest time will be crowned champion of Japan. Top two, like I said, will make it to the World Finals to compete with the Americans and the Europeans. Those races have already been determined, but this one's still in hot pursuit. In fact, when I did the first race, I don't think I had hardly any of these. This Japanese splurging, if you will, on these models is kind of a recent phenomenon. So I have no idea who's going to win this one. I really don't. It's going to be a complete toss-up, I think, for who wins this one out. Power, just like before, too. In the shadow of the Asian dragon, even though these are Japanese and this is probably a Chinese thing, we're going to ramp them all up to that red line, and that's the speed they're all consistently hit prior to hitting the starting gate at a running start. As before, too, some of these have been sitting a while, so I'm going to run them around a one-lap circuit before they do their heat. That way they get all the kinks and the gears loosened up for the big race. So everyone's kind of coming in even. Nice and loose. Oh yeah, what's always fun is to take your bets. Who do you think out of this list is going to win it all or lose it all? Make a note in the comment section below. Every one of these has been assigned a letter, so you can easily track it throughout. So who are you going to pick? It's always fun to leave a comment before you actually see the race of which one you think is going to win. And then go back later to see if you were right or way off or wrong or what have you. Should be an interesting one for sure. Like I said, I have no idea who's going to win this. There are a lot of good picks here. So yeah, first up I'm going to do all the loosening up off camera and then come back with a status prior to the actual race. Okay, just finished the qualifying round. They all made it. They all worked just fine. So everyone will be in the competition. Can't say the same about the Americans or certainly the Europeans, but Japanese, they all worked, so kudos to them. Decent mix of manufacturers. Most of them are Cato, which I say Cato, even though I know it's Cato. It just sounds better when you say Cato. Got some Tomics in here as well, and a couple Micro Aces, which I believe are all Japanese manufacturers. So this is your last chance, because the race is going to start here soon. And we're going to find out which one of these will win it all. Okay, so that was the Japanese circuit. Let's find out who the winners are. But before we do that, of course, let's find out who the losers are. Can't have winners without losers. It's a zero-sum game. Okay, third from the bottom, coming in at still a very impressive 7.2 seconds or 143 miles an hour, is this Cato steam engine. It is the Orient Express steam engine, in fact. And if that speed tells you anything, just how well the other engines did, you know, you're in for a treat. Alright, coming in behind him at 8.1 seconds, 127 miles an hour, is the little Cato steam engine. Not too much of a shocker. I knew this one wasn't super fast. But at 127 miles an hour, I mean, that's still pretty good. And for the title of who did this heat in the slowest time, rocking it out at 12.7 seconds, a respectable 80 miles an hour, is the Imperial Micro Ace steam engine. This one was one of the first Japanese engines I had gotten. It's very obviously Japanese from the front flags. It looks great, but it's not very fast, at least compared to the rest of them. So not too big of a surprise of which one ultimately ended up, you know, at the bottom. And it is actually a wide margin. I mean, this was the only one under 100 miles an hour out of all of them. And it's a 40 mile per hour difference to the next guy. So take it for what you will. At least it looks good. There's always that. Alrighty, so now we'll shift focus and announce some winners. Third place overall, coming in at a blowout record of 276 miles per hour, 3.7 seconds. We have this guy. I call it the Monorail because it looks just like a Disney monorail. But it's a great model. I really like it. Made from Tomix. It does have lights too, so that might have been a factor in the top speed. You know, some of that electricity goes to the lights. I'm not sure how much of a factor, but you got to take that into account, as it is the only one currently with lights in the top 3. Okay, number 2. This one was close. This one and number 1 were very close. But there can only be one winner, and it is not a tie. Number 1 egged this out, barely. But at 3.53 seconds, 292 miles an hour scale speed, we have this guy, who actually won my first race a few years ago when I did a race against all of them. Blew out that speed as well. I want to say, let me get that score there. So that's very impressive because when I did the race a few years ago, it was all a complete straightaway. This one actually had a turn in it. And this guy was the champion of that previous race. But it was clocked at 265 miles an hour. Having a scale speed now of 292 at the same power level of what I was running earlier, or before, it did step up a notch. Now, I do have a completely different layout. I believe the current circuit is a little bit more closer to the power than the previous race, so that might have a factor here. But even though this is probably a favorite going in, it did not win overall. Oh yeah, and I should mention on this one, I'm not sure when this happened, but I went to do the race itself, and I noticed it threw a traction tire off. Not sure if that happened during the qualifying circuit or sometime before, but man was it hard to get that thing on there. In fact, it took me about 2.5 hours to fiddle with it, stop the race, open it up so I can get up in there, because it ain't easy. And I had to pretty much take it all apart to do it. But I did get it back up together, and it did do the race, obviously. Just fine. Actually, the true winner is very interesting, as it was one of my latest purchases, coming in at an even 3.5 miles an hour, 0.03 faster than number 2, clocking in at 294.8 miles per hour. One of my most recent purchases, actually. It is the all-blue, all-impressive Cato Sonic. In fact, it was truly a photo finish, because like I said, these things are going almost 300 miles per hour scale speed, and they were literally one frame apart from finishing the race. But you can see our boy Blue here definitely legged out the bullet train by just a frame, making it the overall winner of the Japanese circuit, and certainly of all the regions for this race. However, the top two will be moving on to the World Finals, which will be a completely different challenge. Actually, there will be 2 rounds to that challenge. All will be revealed in that final video of how that's all going to work. Here is the complete listing of the results. You can see which one you might have thought would have won, how it did, or didn't do. Very interesting that all 4 steam engines were clustered together at the bottom there. The top 14 were all electric. In fact, all of the top 14 beat out the entire European region. I think their tops were in the 150s. Even that little Hiroshima tram at 14 was 162 miles an hour scale speed. And the top 9 were over 200, and it's not even close. Look, 230 was number 9 there, which is far exceeds the 190s that the Americans did as the best. Biggest surprise to me, I think, was number 10, the golden Shikishima. Super fancy luxury train. I thought it'd be pretty quick. I didn't think it would win, but I thought it was going to be like 3 or 4. Still pretty fast at 192. I mean, that's right up there with the top Americans. But there's just too many other choices that just went faster. Like I said, most of these are Cato or Atomics. I believe the only 2 that aren't are the Micro Aces at number 11 and last at 18. Top one was a Cato, second one was a Cato, third place was Atomics, fourth place was Atomics, fifth place was Atomics. Overall, a good race because, like I said, I had no idea how this was going to shake out. Most of these I have not raced before. Definitely have the speed. Okay, now that we have our world global leaders, spoiler alert if you haven't seen those other races, these top 2, let me get rid of the Monorail guy, will compete in the World Finals. Now, it will be a completely separate set of challenges that you'll have to compete for. Because obviously, if we just did the races again, these 2 would win hands down. But we're not going to do that. It's going to be something completely different, and they will join this guy who took second in the Americans, this guy who amazingly beat the Americans, and of course, the 2 from the European race as well are in there. So stay tuned for that. If we already did it, it's posted below in the links. But if not, it will be coming out shortly, once I get around to it. So, the question still remains, which of these will win and be world champion? It's down to these 6. Who will it be? Which region? Which engine? Stay tuned for more.